as we enter into this season for many of online engagement, I'd like to share a resource, a video to talk about a couple different things. Well, it probably won't be one video. It'll probably be a couple different videos. But there's a really great website I like to use when teaching visual design, when dealing with technology, especially when trying to help students and teachers figure out how to craft digital environments or how to analyze digital environments as crafted texts. So www.usability.gov. It has a lot of really good resources. I often will just have students jump onto it and I'll have them look at one of two pages, the visual design page and the basics of user experience page. Other parts of this, project management, content strategy, those you might find more beneficial for if you're like I've connected. If you're connecting with a business writing course or a professional writing course maybe of some kind, there's a lot more room there. I've done a learning community with an intro to business course that this would have been very beneficial for. So you can use that if you want. But I want to start with the basics of user experience. It's a principle for writers that sometimes we don't think about, especially if we're coming from a position or training that is literature based or kind of traditional prose based is really what I should say, not to pick on literature because it has a broad spectrum. But from a traditional perspective of prose as the primary thing. So when we are crafting a text, we talk, often teachers will talk to students about things like formatting and sentence and word choice and this sort of thing. But when we're thinking about digital texts, or honestly, when we are teaching students essays now in our current era, whatever that is for you, that we really want to think about how we can maximize the way even traditional essays are being written with the technological affordances we do have that make things like adding images or visual content or visual design elements into a document so easy. And so if you are someone who doesn't encourage, if you have not made a practice, if you're a teacher and you haven't made a practice of encouraging your students to use images in their essays, not to fight against word count necessarily, or to use other visual design structures in their essay, in their projects, I highly encourage you to make a shift because using images is the kind of thing that they're going to do as professional writers and writers in their everyday lives all the time. So when we tell them to only focus on prose, we actually miss out on a major lesson of thinking about their audience. So I guess this will be the first video, quick version of user experience and user interface. Okay, so I'm just going to read straight off this. User experience focuses on having a deep understanding of the users, and we tell people that in Rhetorical all the time. Think about your reader, think about your audience, right? People tell that to creative writers. Who are you writing for? And because that might change how you decide to solve this story problem. So whatever background you're coming from, we want to think about our users or our readers or our audience. That's user experience. What they need, what they value, what their abilities are, what their limitations are. So as we think about these things, we want to think about technological affordances and knowledge that our users would have, people engaging with this text might have. And so, I think about like inspirational stories in this area from, 60, 70, 80 years ago. I don't know how long it is, but I believe it was Faulkner's Sound and the Fury. He wanted to, instead of just using italics and some tabbing on a basic prose model, he actually has, I believe they have a manuscript of his Sound and the Fury that changes multiple people's perspectives and is written in stream of consciousness that is actually color-coded. And he was hoping the printer would do that, and they just couldn't, or they chose not to because of cost or whatever, especially in the early mid-1900s. But that is thinking about how is my reader going to experience this, and is it going to help communicate the message, whether that's a creative message or a persuasive message or an informative message. We really want to maximize and think about our user experience, not just with the words, but also with the technologies. So factors that influence user experience, according to this website, they borrow Peter Morville's representation of the user experience honeycomb, and this can actually be a really fun activity. Just give students the honeycomb, say, okay, based on what you see here, Pick a website, my Canvas course shell, SIS for your registering for classes, a favorite business, favorite website, something like that. How do these things come into play? When are they useful? When is it desirable to go there? How accessible is it? How valuable is it to the user? How usable is it? Functional? Is it findable? Can I Google search it? Can I do the Control F on the page? Is it a credible source? And so all these things are laid out below, and you can walk through some of this with students. Your content should be original and fulfill a need. So sometimes we'll talk about niche writing, or writing with, if you're writing for your audience in mind, you want them to know it's meaningful. So all of these things are things that teachers are trying to get students to do anyways, or to think about anyways, whether they're doing a rhetorical analysis or whether they're writing their own or crafting their own text. We really want to be drawing on principles of user experience. They directly apply to our considerations of reader and audience, but they do it in a way that goes beyond prose and goes beyond language and starts looking at some of the other parts of how a reader engages with text. And this is something we really have to think about, because some of the best moments in communication history have been when someone said the technology is not doing what I want it to do, or it's not lasting as long when fires catch libraries on when libraries catch on fire. So the transition from papyrus to other forms of paper, the transition from the transition from the scroll to the codex, right? These sorts of the book to the printing press, or the handwritten scribed book to the printing press. These moments where when people realize we need a better way to produce or store or engage with this text somehow, and it's a lot easier to engage if I flip the page versus if I scroll or whatever. So we want to be aware of user experience, broadly defined. There are plenty of resources on this website, but that's just my starter. The starter on don't lose sight of user experience and user interface. How are they engaging? What happens to the user, and what are they going through as they try to figure out the message, meaning, purpose, use of the text that you are giving them?